Hi, this is Empire of the Mind. I'm Dr. Bruce Gilley. There can be few areas where the decolonized movement has made such far-reaching claims as in the calls to decolonize science and social science. Recently, I had the chance to talk to the San Jose State University anthropology professor, Dr. Elizabeth Weiss. She has been at the center of calls to decolonize anthropology because of controversy over her book, Repatriation and Erasing the Past, a study of the anti-scientific advocacy around the repatriation and reburial of ancient American remains. One of the books I've read is this one called Decolonizing Methodologies by the Maori scholar Linda Tuhawai Smith. And for the life of me, and I think I've read this book like 3 times, but I still cannot find a single example in this 230-page book of an actual scientific claim or social scientific claim made in so-called Western research that she thinks is wrong.
Obviously, Western science can be wrong. Westerners get things wrong too, and those using the Western tradition. And I mean, science is in place in a way to self-correct. But where we have evidence of things that are accurate, so far as we know, until new data is known, I don't know where there is a case where it's like, oh no, that is wrong. But if you look at the Native American explanation or the Maori explanation or the First Nation explanations, they got it right.
Certain groups, mainly the Indigenous ones, would seem to think that they can, in some ways, ghettoize science by attaching it to a specific culture, thereby freeing themselves for this kind of whole realm of inquiry that won't be subject to any scrutiny.
I think that that's one of the very important factors with the indigenization movement, is that they don't want to be critiqued. Even things like Native American knowledge or myth can be taken into account as long as it can be critiqued. But if it cannot be critiqued, then it doesn't belong in science, and it will not add to our understanding of objective knowledge. The aim is to understand the world as best as you can, and the only way you can do that is to get all the information possible and then see what holds and be able to see what is false and what is true and critique it and move on. And that's what they don't want, because they don't want to be critiqued, because they know that a lot of what they're saying will not hold. That's my opinion on it. That's my perspective of it. I mean, if your viewpoint is that, no, we didn't come over the land bridge because we've always been here, because we came up from the waters of the Grand Canyon, this is not going to hold, right?
Now, let me come back to this idea of who is the native, who is the indigenous person, because I think this is the great lie at the center of the decolonized movement. And it parallels very closely the great lie at the center of decolonization itself in the 1950s and 60s, which was the United Nations and, the radical countries like Ecuador and Haiti said, we need to decolonize and give the country back to the people, right? Immediate question arises is, who are their representatives, right? Who speaks for them collectively? So it seems to me, when I look at these so-called indigenous activists trying to decolonize science, that they're a fake, that they're a sham for the most part. They don't represent anything. There's a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which came out a couple of years ago, New York Times bestseller, written by a SUNY botanist named Robin Kimmerer, who writes in the voice of a Native American. And nobody really actually asks about, are you actually a Native American? She's enrolled in a tribe in Oklahoma. One of her grandfathers was enrolled in a tribe in Oklahoma and was sent away by his parents to get off the reservation, to get a formal education. And by her own account, her parents never looked at their Indian identity until very late. And she herself also seems to have come very late to this. But suddenly, she is the representative of Native America and this deep spiritual wisdom in the field of botany. And she can talk to plants, apparently. And I'm not sure if it's just because I don't soak in this Kool-Aid often enough, but this just seems like a big lie to me. This just seems, these people don't represent anything except they've cottoned on to the fact that a bunch of liberals want to have native indigenous wisdom in their lives. And this is a good marketing ploy. I mean, is there anything more to it than that?
Tribes have changed drastically over the years. Some tribes are actually very new. Some are more ancient. The Native American tribes themselves don't use genetics to determine who's in the tribe. They use historical tracings, right? So what they call blood quantum, but they're not literally testing any blood. They're basically looking at family trees, which can be faked, of course.
The other thing that strikes me in reading books on decolonizing methodologies and indigenizing science and social science is most of these people seem to be profoundly ignorant about scientific and social scientific methods. It seems to reflect this kind of this almost trained ignorance about what modern science and social science actually does.
I have to say, sometimes I think they must know. They must know some of these are just false narratives.
It does seem like a great cloak of darkness coming down upon science.
In physical anthropology, the practical things are at stake as well. For example, how are we going to train forensic anthropologists? I think the other important aspect is that it bleeds into everything else. So now it's the remains, then it becomes the artifacts, then it becomes the data, then it's not enough. Then it's like, well, now we want the depictions of it, and then the books are written about it. And so I think that it's an erasing of the past and of even present works. I think that the ability to ask the questions that you want to ask and live a free life is at stake.